Look, the general vibe is pretty enthusiastic and positive. Most people that the ABC have spoken to over the last few days have been genuinely pleased to see the King and Queen come to Samoa. And they're also pleased about the opportunity to host CHOGM. They see it as a chance not just to show that very famous Samoan hospitality, but also as a chance to use the platform that CHOGM inevitably gives to Samoa to really elevate the issues that they care about. So on the top of that list is climate change and the fact that there's still not enough climate finance that's being handed to smaller and developed nations, but a host of other issues as well. So there is a sense here in Samoa that this is not just an enormous drain on resources and a big ask for the government, but also an opportunity for Samoa, and one that many people in this country seem pretty determined to grasp.
As Commonwealth leaders arrive, Stephen, what are the other issues outside of climate change that are going to be debated at CHOGM?
Look, obviously, when you talk about climate change, it's not just these questions around emissions reduction. There are also a whole broader set of interconnected issues, and I think it's very likely that we'll see over the next few days Commonwealth leaders endorse what's been called an Oceans Declaration. Now, we don't know exactly what's in it, but there is apparently going to be some pretty substantial language around things like the reduction in emissions, the importance of ocean protection, as well as, of course, the importance of allowing Pacific Island nations and other low-lying island nations, the importance of making sure that even if the seas do rise and subsume their countries, that their maritime and national boundaries are permanently set in law, no matter what happens to their physical state on the ocean or on the ground. So I think that's likely to be a real talking point. Of course, there are other issues that are inevitably going to crop up. You'd imagine that leaders here are going to debate many of the ongoing conflicts in the world, whether that's the war in Gaza and Israel's approach to that, or the war in Ukraine and Russia's invasion. But because this is a big and sprawling group of 56 member countries, often with similar values, yes, or similar systems, but also with very diverging cultures and sometimes very diverging interests, it's unlikely that there's going to be much consensus on these issues. And the broad expectation is that when that final leaders' communique is issued at the end of the week on Saturday evening, that on many of these issues they are going to stick to pretty broad language.
As has been the case with previous CHOGM gatherings, there's always talk about the relevance of the Commonwealth at these meetings. Do you think it will be similar this time round?
Yeah, I mean, this has long been a perennial issue for the Commonwealth. Every time a CHOGM leaders meeting crops up, at least in the last couple of decades, the guest list is pretty closely scrutinised. There's no doubt that if you compare it to, say the 80s or even the 90s, that you probably aren't having the same level of representation here at the Commonwealth. Just as an example, this time around, a number of high-profile leaders, including Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, the Prime Minister of South Africa, probably the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, all of these people are no-shows. It's probably less mandatory as a fixture on the diplomatic circuit than it was back in the 80s, when you had those huge and consequential debates over things like the question of apartheid in South Africa. So the critics of the Commonwealth will no doubt seize on this as proof that the organisation is losing its legitimacy. The Commonwealth, though, pushes back very hard on that, and they say what's important to look at is just what's happening between members. And, if you look at the bloc of Commonwealth nations, increasingly trade between those countries is really growing as their economies swell. Africa is becoming an increasingly important and consequential part of the world. The Commonwealth is a really important bridge between African nations and other nations with a similar legacy. So there is still a role there, but those questions around its long-term permanence are no doubt going to resurface. The other thing that will undoubtedly crop up in one shape or another are questions around its legacy, or rather its history as a creature or as a child of empire. There has been a push in recent years from some countries in Africa and in the Caribbean, less so in the Pacific, for the United Kingdom to pay reparations for the depredations of slavery and colonialism. Now, Keir Starmer, the new-ish Labor Prime Minister, has made it clear that is not going to happen. It's not going to be something his government pursues. So perhaps this might be something of a one-sided conversation, but it might not die away entirely. All three candidates to become the next Secretary General of the Commonwealth, have said that they do favour reparatory justice in one form or another. So I think it's likely that even if Samoa would rather this issue stays firmly on the back burner, and even if the United Kingdom is keen to smother any talk of reparations, it's likely to crop up in one shape or another before the week here is out.